Lock-on versus gyro controls. Which one is better? In this video, I want to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of both control types. I want to start off this video by saying if you're a ranged weapon user, the only control type available for ranged weapons is the gyro controls. But for Blade Master weapons, we have the option to choose from both. So which one's better? Now let's start off with the lock-on controls. Lock-on is locked behind an armor skill, which means you have to equip an armor piece with the lock-on skill in order to use this control type. And currently in mhnow, there are only 3 armor pieces with this skill: the Kulu Helm, the Rathian Vambraces, and the Black Diablo's Waist. Lock-on is a great skill for breaking parts and maximizing your damage by consistently hitting monster weak spots. The trade-off is you're forced to equip one of these armor pieces. And it just feels a bit restrictive, especially if you want to add other skills into your build. Take elemental builds for example. You'd want to swap out the lock-on skill for armor pieces with elemental attack skills. And that's where gyro controls come in. Without the lock-on skill, the only way we'll be hitting monster weak spots is by using gyro controls, but it does take a bit of practice. With gyro controls turned on, you really have to think about your positioning and the tilt of your phone whenever the monster moves. While with lock-on controls, the camera tracks the monster for you and all you gotta do is tap. It's more consistent with hitting monster weak spots, and even if your positioning is not ideal, lock-on still finds a way to hit the targeted area. That's why when farming, I prefer using lock-on to get those consistent part breaks for more rewards. And mhnow is meant to be played outdoors, in public areas. And as much as possible, I want to keep a low profile and not attract any unnecessary attention to myself. Playing with lock-on controls is less conspicuous, as it looks like you're just sending a text message. But playing with gyro controls, you're bound to attract some attention when you're constantly moving your phone around. In crowded areas, like when you're in transit, riding a crowded bus or a crowded train, playing with gyro controls becomes impossible, and you might just end up hitting someone by accident. With lock-on, the biggest challenge you'll be facing is toggling the skill on and off and tapping on the right weak spot. 5% of the time, my fat fingers would still tap on the wrong weak spot, and I would waste precious seconds toggling the skill on and off just to retarget the part that I want. Toggling the skill at the start of every hunt takes a split second, and sometimes that split second is enough to get you hit. Tapping on those small targets would sometimes initiate an attack even if you didn't mean to, and because of that unintentional move, the monster could hit you. Needing to toggle the skill on and off after a part break just to target another part takes about a second, an important second we might need when hunting down monsters. And in this game, especially against 8-star monsters and above, every second counts. Retargeting parts is a hassle that gyro controls doesn't have to deal with, because with gyro controls, we could simply tilt our phones to hit a different part on the monster. Take hunting Kuliaku for example. To maximize your damage, you would lock onto its head or its forelegs, and locking onto these parts becomes a huge hassle when Kuliaku is carrying a rock. Our attacks would constantly bounce off when locked onto these parts, and the only solution is to toggle off lock-on and just retarget the weak spots once Kuliaku throws away the rock. With gyro controls, you don't need to toggle on or off anything, and you just have to tilt your phone away from the rock. Now, I do have some builds that do not have the lock-on skill, so I'm forced to use gyro controls. And in my experience, it does take some practice, especially when it comes to dodging. When gyro controls is on, the camera gets so zoomed in on the monster that some monster attacks go out of frame, like Rathian's tail sweep attack. Now, I always play on portrait mode, never on landscape mode, and when Rathian does the tail sweep attack, its tail goes out of my view. You know it's coming, but you have to guess the timing since you don't see the tail. If the camera wasn't so zoomed in, I'd probably be using the gyro controls more often. So hopefully Niantic could give us the option to change the camera's zoom when gyro controls is turned on. You can change the zoom when gyro controls is turned off, so I don't see any reason why we can't change the zoom when it's turned on. Now, the main downside of lock-on controls is that it forces you to equip certain armor pieces. And if your build doesn't have any space for it, then gyro controls is your next option. So it's important to know how to use both lock-on and gyro controls. Maybe in the future, Niantic could add a lock-on deco or charm that we could easily slip into our builds. But for now, it's best to know how to use both. Which control type do you prefer? Do you prefer locking onto monsters or do you prefer gyro controls? Let me know why in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like to support the channel, and for more mhnow content, don't forget to subscribe. Feel free to check out the video on the screen, but that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.